18 months ago when we started this group, we were thinking about how we can engage the business community to really help each other kind of lock arms and grind it out every day. That's not part of our mission statement, but that's kind of the word I've been using, is that we all need each other. We can't do it alone, and part of this group is to learn from each other, help each other, pick each other up when they fall down, and keep each other humble when we might get a little too high. So we're glad that you're here, and part of that was how can we learn from other business leaders, and that led us to where we are today with let's hear directly from business leaders, from presidents, from CEOs that have tried to live it, their faith, their whole life, and has tried to do the right thing, and how they go about it. And if we could take one nugget or two nuggets from each of these wonderful people, then I think this morning will be a success. So that's what we're trying to do. And before I introduce Ed, I just want to give everybody at the Spiritual Life Center, all the staff, a big thank you for all the work that you've done. So Kelly and your team, thank you. If anybody's been to any meetings or conferences or other events like this, you know this is a top-notch facility, and we're very blessed to be here. So with that, I'm going to introduce Ed O'Malley. Ed has been in Wichita for over 10 years, and I've known him just about that long. It's been a real pleasure to get to know him and to see what he's done over the last years at the Kansas Leadership Center. So with that, I'd like to thank Ed for being our facilitator today, and welcome him.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Blake. I'll have our panel come up in just a moment, but I want to share a few ground rules first. Panel discussions can be boring if we're not careful, all right? So my job, your job, the panelist's job is to make sure that this isn't one of those boring panels, that it's an engaging panel, that it's a thought-provoking panel, that we catalyze conversation. Literally in this room, that we catalyze conversation in our heads. As we're driving out of the parking lot, there'll be an idea or two rattling around in your head that you're thinking about because of this discussion. My hope is that you'll have questions, and that your questions will be good ones and thought-provoking ones, and they'll provoke thoughtful interaction with the panelists, but also with others in this group. So we're all in this together. I think of myself as a little bit like Oprah Winfrey this morning. So I'm trying to get a great discussion going on. If it doesn't seem provocative enough, I might have to become Jerry Springer. You don't want to see me become Jerry Springer. A few other quick things at the Kansas Leadership Center. If you don't know about us, we're based in downtown. We work with Kansans all over the state. And from the beginning of our work, we're focused on civic life. But from the beginning of our work, the intersection of faith and leadership has always been in the middle of our thinking. We've done a number of initiatives and experiences and programs and endeavors directly with faith communities all across Kansas. But maybe more importantly for today, as a fellow Catholic, my leadership and my faith is always intertwined, or at least I'm trying to make it always intertwined. I'm trying to make it always intertwined. And if I'd be honest with you this morning, I'd tell you that I probably fail at that more than I succeed. But I'm trying it. The things we want to talk about today are really about this idea, this linkage between our leadership and our faith. What does that look like? When does that happen? How does that happen? And our three CEOs are going to help us really imagine that and speak from their experience. But the idea is for you to be thinking about your experience. Right? Learning from the conversation that's happening, but applying it to yourself, to your organization, to the organizations you're connected with. And let me just give you a general frame for this. That you may or may not agree with this idea. You might not want to buy the idea, but I'd ask you to rent the idea for the next 45 minutes. Right? And here's the idea. I don't think any of us are really wonderful at integrating our leadership and our faith all the time. And this idea really hit me about a year and a half ago. We were doing a book club in Blessed Sacrament, And we chose the book, the pastor chose the book, The Gospel of Matthew. And I'm reading that book with some good buddies. We meet once a week over lunch. And we started to realize how often Peter got put in his place. Like he kept screwing up. Right? And Jesus kept pointing out how he was screwing up. And we had this great conversation at lunch, all business guys, about how, wow, if Peter, who becomes the rock, and he's right next to Jesus, he's there with him. If he's not consistently living the ideas, there's no way we are. We've got to try to. But let's get real, was our thinking around this table that day. Let's get real. That none of us, if Peter can't do it all the time, surely we're not doing it all the time. So my frame for this discussion, the liberty I took as a facilitator of this, is to assume that this is a struggle for all of us. And the temptation, the easy thing to do today would be to treat it kind of frivolously. Oh yeah, leadership, great, I intertwine that all the time. Oh yeah, servant leadership, I do that all the time. But I think it's probably the exception more than the rule. So let's get thinking about this. Let's get talking about this. If our three panelists could come on up and sit behind the table here. We have three wonderful CEOs with us. I'll give them a chance to say a sentence or two about their companies in just a moment. But Patty and Jim and Bob, here comes Patty, there's Jim, where's Bob run off to? There's Bob, all right. I thought maybe I scared Bob away from that. Glad you're here, Bob. We lost the microphone that was up here. We got a microphone up here that I'll ask you guys to share back and forth. These are names, these are people that we're all familiar with. They run great companies. So Patty, of course, is the CEO of JR Custom Metals. Jim is the CEO of AG Holdings. And Bob is the CEO of Simpson Construction. Three wonderful business people, three strong Catholics in our community, three people who perhaps mistakenly said yes to agreeing together. I think the spiritual way life does, right, Father? People just say yes, maybe even when they should have. I've told them that, look, a lot of panels, the people on the panel are supposed to be experts. A lot of you go to a conference related to your industry or something like that, and the people that are on the panel are supposed to be the experts. They know everything, and we're all here to sit and learn. And what we talked about before we got started this morning, I talked with each of the panelists, is none of us are an expert on this topic. None of us are experts at integrating our leadership in our faith. None of us know exactly how to do it at every moment. None of us can tell others exactly how to do it. So I think rather than experts, they are conversation catalysts. Right? And they're going to help us catalyze the conversation. Before I get started with my really tough questions for you, I sent them a list of softball questions. I don't have to just turn them in. I promise. But before I get started with the questions, I think it'd be great if each of you could do a 2-second description just of your business. Just in case there are some folks here who aren't familiar with the companies, we're going to dive into how you integrate leadership into your faith, into your leadership, into your business life. But maybe just a quick little background of tell us a sentence or two about the company. Jim, you want to start?
Sure, you bet. Good morning. Glad to see everybody this morning. My name is Jim Korok, and my company is AG Holdings, and we are definitely a company in transition, but AG Holdings' primary objective is a holder and developer of hotel real estate assets and a management company, formerly a management company as well.
Thanks, Jim.
Good morning. I'm Patty Kohler with JR Custom Metal Products. It's a family-owned business, and we manufacture material handling equipment for the aviation, for oil industry, wind and gas. It's just we service OEMs, original equipment manufacturers throughout the state and country.
Hi, I'm Bob Simpson. I have a company called Simpson Construction Services. We do commercial construction across the central part of Kansas primarily. Educational, medical, multifamily, senior living, those type of markets that we work in. And I'm married to Ann. That's probably my biggest accomplishment.
That's great. That's great. All right, I'm going to ask an initial question here in a moment. I would love you to be thinking about questions that are on your mind, and they can be questions for the panelists, of course. They'll be great if they're also questions that each and every one of us should consider. So, I don't know about you, but I'm intrigued by each of their companies, and I kind of want to know a little more about the hotel business or about whatever it might be. So we want to try to resist questions about their business, and we want to try to entertain questions about the intersection of their faith and their business. And I'll get to a moment here in a little while where I'll pause and I'll take any questions. And at that moment, it'll be really embarrassing if nobody has one. So, those of you who always feel embarrassed for the person who is going to be in my situation, have a question ready. And I do want to coach you just a little bit. Questions that are good, short questions are the best kind. If it's a long story that eventually gets to a question, I've been known to cut people off. I'm not afraid to use my authority I have in this moment. So a good short question, then we'll get the group thinking and talking. All right, my first question is just, if you could just get us started, what does it look like? I mean, when you're integrating your faith into your work, what does that look like? If I was up on Mars looking at your company, what would I see? Or what would I hear to suggest to me, there's an integration there of Patty's faith in her work, of Jim's faith in his work, of Bob's faith in his work. And again, all these questions, no right or wrong answers. They're all just thought-provoking. We should be thinking about, what does it look like when we make that integration? Now, how would somebody know if they couldn't just hear your thoughts, that they had to watch you or listen to you? What would tell them that the faith is integrated? So, what does it look like? Who wants to go first? Patty has the mic in her hand.
I'll go first. Okay. Well, I think when I think of my faith, I think of self-respect, respecting others. It is a family business, and from a very young age, our parents always preached love, faith, and trust. And so we live by those words to respect and have open communication with our employees and build working relationships. And I think that's been our success.
And Patty, I want to ask you a quick follow-up question, because I think I've heard that I think this is unique. There's some very visible signs, right?
Right.
I mean, if I walk in your conference room, what do I see?
The crucifix.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting.
Well, and you'll see a crucifix in most of our gathering spaces, whether it be the conference room or our training center. And it goes back, the fact that I'm Hispanic, the fact that I was raised with our faith, that it was an important, so our faith is really transparent at work. And I think that, being a privately owned company, you can express your faith. I know it's different in a public company.
Bob, what's on your mind in this question? What does it look like to have your faith integrate with your work, from your perspective?
Probably first off is what we're not doing as well as we could, but keeping our eye on the things that I think make a difference. My industry, I think sometimes people don't appreciate people who get their hands dirty. And I remember hearing a speaker one time talk about John Paul's encyclical about work, the workplace, and things like that, that people need dignity when they work, and so they need to be appreciated. And the speaker went on to use an example of a communist worker in the Polish shipping yards that John Paul was familiar with. And he said, we pretend to work and they pretend to pay us. And the point being is that you can't get dignity to grow in that kind of a vocation or that kind of job. I see that a lot of times with people. I have a lot of Hispanic workforce. I have a lot of people, carpenters, laborers, that, like I say, get their hands dirty. They haven't had a lot of education. But, you know, I guess the thing that I would hope that, and we have a lot of groundwork to do on this, is to appreciate them more and more. And frankly, it's getting to be such a scarcity of those kind of folks that I think the appreciation level is starting to rise out of need when your plumbing doesn't work and your electrical doesn't work, or we don't have enough tradespeople to go in that. So I guess that would be the thing I would say is the appreciation of another person, the dignity, and hope that we can kind of foster that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. What do you think, Jim? What's on your mind?
Well, it comes to my mind, Blake mentioned Matthew Kelly in his opening remarks, and one of the things that Matthew Kelly talks about is that word flow. And to me, that is an example or really illustrates to me when things are working well, there's just a flow that's going on in the business, and flow, frankly, that's going on in my life. And I've learned that all things seem to be much better in the business because the way I look at it, when I have that personal flow, and that flow for me comes from personal disciplines. And my wife Kelly asked me, so, you know, why do you get up at 4:15 every morning to spend 45 minutes reading and meditating and spending time with your devotionals? Why are you on your knees every night before bed and every morning before you rise? And I share with her, it is so much an act because of needing Christ. I mean, I am such a broken person and so full of sin that I know that if I am not in that flow and daily taking care of those disciplines, that I will very, very quickly go a different road. And from a business standpoint, when I know that when I am taking care of those disciplines and I am spending time with our Lord and doing those things, that the way that I look upon my business and the way I look upon the people that I interact with every day changes significantly. So the daily items and the things that happen may not change, but my perspective on them changes significantly when I have those disciplines in place.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about these answers is you can imagine if you were up on Mars looking down and you'd see Jim, just to go to answer for a minute, you'd see Jim spending that time, literally spending that time. Jim could be reviewing spreadsheets. He could be going over the latest marketing plan. Right? All sorts of things he could be doing. But I appreciate each of you sharing kind of the initial thoughts on how this integration connects to your work. The next question I want to ask is, what makes it so hard to integrate our leadership into our faith into our leadership more, our faith into our work? What makes it hard? And this is actually a question that in a minute, after we hear some initial thoughts, I'd like to turn back to you all and give you a chance to think about and to talk about at your tables. By the way, this would be a good time if you don't like who you're sitting by, you can get up and move. You good? You good? Okay, all right. Jesus is about brutal honesty, right? But so in a minute, I'd like us all to think about this question: what makes it hard? And if you've done anything with the Kansas Leadership Center, you'll know that this question is always on the tip of our tongue. What makes it hard? It's easy to describe what we should do. It's easy to describe when we do something great. It's harder to really figure out, yeah, but what gets in the way? What makes it hard? Why is this integration still not the norm? Right? Maybe for ourselves, maybe for our business community. So what makes it hard? So old facilitation technique. You ask a question, you ramble on long enough to give them a chance to think of an answer, right? Jim, let's start with you this time, if you don't mind. What makes it hard? I mean, you described a routine that you do that helps you. So we can talk about what makes it easier. And we'll come to that question. But what makes it hard to integrate?
Yeah, boy, as soon as you said that sentence, it popped right to me, and that's an easy one for me, and that's pride. Pride and our Capen's men's group is getting ready. I guess next week we start again, and we'll be reading Bishop now, Robert Barron's book about the 7 deadly sins, and kind of looking ahead on that, the deadly sin that Bishop Barron points out, the first one is pride. And there is no question for me that pride is the thing that gets in the way, and pride leads to lots of sins for me. And the antidote he points out as well is humility with pride. And that's a beautiful thing about his book. If you haven't had a chance to read it, or maybe he points out the deadly sins, and then he also points out the antidote for each of these sins as well. But one quote I noticed from him, it's not, humility is not thinking lesser of yourself. Humility is thinking less of yourself. And that's one thing that stuck with me, but quick answer certainly is pride is in the way for me.
I just have to improvise on this for just a minute. Yesterday I was at the University of Kansas Hospital up in Kansas City. And I saw miracles happen. I saw a 1-pound baby. I saw a baby born with her intestines on the outside. And I talked to the doctor who can fix that. You know, I talked to people who had new kidneys and new livers. Right? Who ever thought of that, right? But miracles. Right? In the mid-90s, that hospital was the worst hospital in the nation. And you listen to their CEO tell the story. He wasn't telling a Catholic story, although it's a Catholic story. He was talking about how they had a moment where they had to decide to close the hospital, sell the hospital, or get honest with themselves about how bad they were. And when they got humble and they focused on humility, it's one of the best hospitals in the nation, by far, that is performing miracles every day. So it's like the power of what happens when we get humble, but pride gets in the way. Patty, Bob, what do you think? What makes it hard?
Well, you know, sometimes I think about that is sometimes you make easy, wrong decisions, and you really stop and think that, you know, the presidents should really be the right decision, but how do you get there? A book that I have read and I think quite often refer to is the book Jesus is My CEO by Larry, I'm trying to think of the last name. Larry's the first name, but
I'm sure Blake's read it.
Yeah, that's right.
I believe Larry Julian, I believe is the last name. A great book. But yeah, it's when you are in those situations and sometimes the peer pressure holds you back from making the right decision.
Yeah. Bob, what are you thinking about?
I don't get up at 4:15. That's great.
Somebody get Bob another cup of coffee.
Hand me a pillow.
You know, I guess this thing here sometimes gets in the way for me. Technology is a great tool, but I think the lost art of conversation and dialogue with people is an impediment to talking about your faith, and I look at this as a lot of ways a fragmentation. You get little sound bites, snippets, whether it be a text or a news article, and the assumption is it's automatically true because it's written. And yet we all know deep down it's not always true. And we sometimes react automatically to something that's really not there yet. And we're not present. When my wife goes, the other day we're in the restaurant where my son and I are doing this, and then we look around and there's 3 or 4 tables, and I would say 75% of the people were sitting at that table, you know, texting, not busy, not being present. So, you know, I look at this as a great tool, but I also look at it as somewhat of a detriment to being present to each other, to being in dialogue. And sometimes your faith is standing up a little bit, saying, no, that just ain't so.
You know, what I really appreciate the way Patty and Bob are framing this, to give us an opportunity to think about maybe 2 different kind of meta ways of thinking about what makes it hard. I mean, Patty talked about there are times when, like the peer pressure, right? The pressure. So what I thought she was saying was there are times when I might be cognizant that this is the way I should go, but I go this way. But I'm cognizant. And what I hear Bob saying is that there's all sorts of stuff happening that makes us not even conscious of the times when we're not focusing on living the Gospels. So all sorts of stuff happening. You know, if we think about political engagement can be an expression of our faith. Okay? And for those of you who don't know, full disclosure, don't hold against me, my background's in politics. I was in the legislature, it's a long time ago, so if you don't like what's happening, you can't hold it against me. So political engagement can be an expression. It can be. It's not always. Probably usually not. It can be an expression of our faith. We all know that. And so I hear that particular expression of your faith. How do you integrate that or not integrate that in your work and your leadership? Bob drew the short straw.
Yeah, real short. I'm not going to answer your question to start with. You know, the struggle, I got a thread out of that, JV, on business and, you know, candidates and platforms. I heard that coming out of that question. I struggle, you know, in a for-profit business to understand that capitalism can have a lot of good to it and can have a lot of evils to it. But, you know, we all signed up for a blue-collar faith. So you get your hands dirty, you respect people, you understand who the poor are, and you have a responsibility to that. So it's hard, especially, it doesn't matter state, national, to line up on that platform right now. It's a teeter-totter that I think we're all struggling with. Because there are people who don't choose to be poor. They don't choose their situation. They are who they are and where they are at. And we have a responsibility to respond to that. So, and yet I understand supporting a business for profit, if it's done in the right way, it's a powerful, powerful tool to do good. So.
Thanks, Bob. Patty, Jim, any thoughts?
That's a difficult question. Well, when it comes to candidates, if they're local or here in the state, you know, I really try to get to know the person before I make a decision. But we are in a critical situation when it comes to our nation. You know, being Hispanic, you weigh one way. Being a business person, you weigh a different way. So I think our nation really needs to pray very hard to make the right decision. I don't think no one has the answer.
Pretty simple for me. I really have worked intentionally on filtering the news sources. Frankly, if I get caught up in the Fox Newses and everything on a regular basis, I just see that whole flow I was talking about before goes out the door. So I have two channels on my car on the radio. The first one is K-Love and the other one is NPR. And when I'm feeling fed up with the NPR, I very quickly go over to the K-Love and frankly spend more of my time on that side. But I have just made the decision I'm not going to do this whole Chicken Little, the sky is falling thing and not get absorbed in the whole political craziness.
We'll have time for one other quick question. I can't resist the quick thought. I love the idea of it as an expression. So as business people, we might think about what are the different ways we express our faith. And political expression is one of those. Right? And how do we choose when to activate that one versus when to activate evangelizing in a different way in the workplace? Right? I think it's a really neat question that JB has us thinking about of what are the different expressions and when to choose them. I think we have time for one final question. Yes, Nick.
Has any one of you, in the course of your business, maybe in dealing with a particular problem with an employee, used an example out of the gospel? What would Jesus do in this particular case?
Great. Everybody hear the question? Have you used a particular time where you've used something out of the gospel when you're dealing with an employee or a tough situation, or what comes to mind?
Yeah, Nick, I will say I haven't done it verbally, am a little ashamed of that actually, but certainly internally I've done that, and I will tell you that I've done that internally and on the outside been burned too. I will tell you, I went through a very cynical time when we had hundreds of employees, and there were times where I felt like I was being as Christ-centered as I could and doing what God wanted me to do in a situation, and turn around and get a harassment or some kind of a discrimination filing against me, and so I definitely went through a period of cynicism that way, but I know that that's an area that I could apply better, no question. Fortunately, I just have one employee now, so it's not as hard.
Patty, Bob?
Oh, wow. Well, one of the things is, since we are so transparent, I really pray about it. And in our organization, our people feel comfortable showing and sharing their faith. So it's usually someone coming in and saying, sharing their problem, and hey, will you pray for me? And sometimes we've even prayed together. So, like I say, I have a really special place that I'm a part of with 130 employees. I do want to share one story, and that is that when we've had groundbreakings or when we built a new facility, and we've had a number of them over the years, I always call our parish priest to come out and bless the ground, and then later bless the facility and bless our employees. And they're they're very comfortable with that, and they feel like this is home. And maybe their home life isn't, as great as it can be, but they know that they're safe and that there's people that care for them in their work environment.
I think that's a tough question in our business especially. I would tell you that, my wife said the other day, so-and-so thought you're really kind of a laid-back kind of guy. And she said, they really don't know you. and I have to confess, I'm a person with a lot of anxiety and worry. I work in a business that has a lot of risk. I buy a lot of insurance, Blake, that. Risk management, and that's supposed to take the worry away, and it doesn't. We all live in this world of a lot of despair, loneliness, and anxiety. And, for me, what would Jesus do in those situations? And it would be to detach. And, Jim's up at 4:15 every morning. 8 o'clock Monday night's adoration for me. In the evening, not in the morning, in the evening.
You're doing it.
And I also, will try to get to St. Catherine's for 7:30 Mass a couple times during the week. And those are my times to detach and get rid of the anxiety and leave it, to Jesus to take. God said, I can't deal with this. I can't get this to happen. So sometimes when I have to let an employee go, or in a situation with a subcontractor that needs to go, I have a lot of turmoil, a lot of anxiety about how to deal with that. So I rely on those times.